So we are in the midst of the throes of the family unraveling of our family, Yitzchak and Rivka's household. We've just learned a little bit last week about listening to the dark heart of Esav and hearing some of the issues that percolate for him internally, or I should say more than percolate, maybe are simmering within him. And we took a little bit of time to have conversation about views here and there about Esav, some who felt much more empathy for Esav, and others who felt really he was not worthy of all that much empathy. And I got a great note from Karen, who gave me some really good things to think about in terms of some of the symbolism of why she felt strongly that he's not really deserving of all that much empathy, the compartmentalization of love of family, and yet doing horrible things to other people, the midrashic traditions in that vein, the notion that he's a hunter, the notion he's grabbing different things, different people. Contrast that with his brother, who is not perfect, but also much more sympathetic in various ways. So I'm going to table that conversation only because we spent at least a session, maybe even two or three, talking about Esav. I mentioned a few times already methodologically, of course, we can have these conversations. We should have these conversations because when we talk about issues in parshanut, that is to say, in trying to understand the words of the Torah, the stories of the Torah, it's not like in the world of halacha where there is a hard and fast bottom line that we need to come to in almost all circumstances because we practically need to know how to do things. When it comes to this, we could see it this way and that. Within Rashi himself, within various Mefarshei Mikra, we've seen various ways in which there can be an oscillation, even within one commentary of a parshan, of a biblical commentator, say, well, it could be this way, or it could be that way. And the last piece of the parsha, which we'll now come to, is Rivka's instruction to Yaakov has been given. That was chapter 27, verse 45. We're up to verse 46. This is the only conversation between Yitzchak and Rivka. And we let that sit. It's the only conversation between Yitzchak and Rivka, if you think about it. They met back in Parshat Chayei Sarah. They got married. They were married for 20 years. The Torah describes a very prayerful life. He facing her, she facing him in opposite corners of the room, if you will, but there's some kind of dynamic there. But when she's pregnant already, she doesn't go to him for consultation. She goes to seek out Hashem, but not to the greatest tzaddik of the whole generation. And we talked about that, not to, again, this is just review, but there's no conversation per se between the two of them about the matter. If there was, it's just not recorded. We can surmise there was conversation. The Torah didn't record it. There is one other episode where it says Yitzchak is making Rivka laugh. That's in the case with Avimelech looking through the window. That may be euphemistic language, maybe literal language, whatever it is. There's some communication, but there's not a dialogue, meaning we don't have the words. In Parshat Toldot, chapter 27, that we've been focused on for months now, or many, many weeks at least, the giving of the blessing, Rivka overhears Yitzchak telling Esav he's going to give him the bracha, and Rivka does not go to speak to Yitzchak. She goes to talk to Yaakov to get him to disguise himself, to bring the food, etc. And here is the only dialogue that we have recorded between the two of them. I'm going to take questions and comments in just 2 minutes. Let me just fill out some of the psukim. Hold your question and comment. I do want to hear it. I just want to unpack some of the psukim. Pasuk Memva, verse 46, chapter 27, verse 46, right? Vatomer Rivka el Yitzchak katzti b'chaya mipnot benot chet. Rashi's interpretation is probably huge, close to the pshat we understand. Nimasli. Ma'asti b'chaya. It's disgusting. I can't handle it anymore. On account of the benot chet. Who are the benot chet? Those are the people, the daughters who live around. Those are the women who live around. The chitim. Im lokeach Yaakov isha mibnot chet ka'ela mibnot haaretz lama li chayim. If Yaakov will take a wife from the daughters of chet, like these, from the daughters of the land, So why am I alive? It's an existential question. Rivka keeps asking existential questions. The last time she asked about Lama Li Chayim, it was a bit of a different formulation. It was the beginning of the Parsha. If you go back to the pregnancy episode, so you have that in verse 22. Im Kain Lama Ze Anochi. If this is what is my lot, so chapter 25, sorry, verse 22. You flip over there, right? It's there's kicking going on, there's conflict, whatever it might be, natural conflict, unnatural conflict, the way of pregnancies, not the way of pregnancy, normal pregnancies. She asks such a question, Im Kain lama ze anochi. She goes to seek Hashem. Now she says, Katzti b'chayai, mipnot benot chet. And if that's going to happen, he's also going to marry someone from the benot chet. Lama li chayim. Why am I even alive? Now you remember that the linchpin that bridges the two stories is Esav was already married. That was the introduction to chapter 27, right? In the numerical division of chapters, we're in chapter 27, but we already talked about the idea that the numbers are somewhat, for our purposes, meaningless, not meaningful. And the 1-2 verses just before chapter 27 started was that Esav turned 40. That was chapter 26, verse 34. Esav turned 40 and he got married. Who did he marry? 2 women who are Hittim, in English, Hittites. 2 women from the exact nation you're not supposed to marry with. Remember, Avram sent his emissary away. Eliezer goes up to Aram Naharaim to find a wife for Yitzchak. Don't let him marry a woman from Canaan. So what did Esav do? He married 2 women from Canaan. And which women? Chittim. What does Rivka say to Yitzchak? Ani lo yachol. I can't have this happen, that another one of my sons will marry in this way. And there's another hint to the displeasure, which is mentioned at the end of chapter 26. It was a morat ruach. It created embitterment for Yitzchak and for Rivka. Radak, by the way, spells it Lama li Chayim. It'll be better that I die than not have to confront my son marrying Chittim, because I can't, he can't be many more days without being married. He's already over 40, and therefore you have to tell him to go to Lavan and to stay away from his brother and his brother's sword, but also to stay away from the daughters of Canaan. So that way he'll get married to someone who's connected somehow to the family. And here we have Vayikra Yitzchak El Yaakov, Vayivarech Oto, Vayitzaveu, Vayomer Lo, Lo Tikach Isha Mi Benot Canaan. Yitzchak calls Yaakov. He gives him a bracha. We don't know the bracha. This is not the bracha from before. It's not the next bracha, but there's yet another bracha, another way in which the Pshat wants to clarify whatever happened there with the bracha being stolen, the subterfuge. Don't conclude that Yitzchak was somehow rejecting Yaakov. He's giving him another bracha. The main bracha is still coming. But what did he tell him? Don't take a woman from the Benot Canaan. Is that a chiddush to Yaakov Avinu? Or is that something he already understood? Hum lech Padana Aram, Beita Vituel Avi'imecha. Go to Padan Aram, to the house of Betuel, the father of your mother, to your grandfather's house. Ve'kach lecha misham isham ibnot Lavan, achi imecha. Specifically, take a wife from the daughters of Lavan, who is the brother of your mother. Notice that twice the reference is your mother's relative. And now, unlike what Rivka had suggested, Yitzchak comes up with, it should be someone from the family. When we learn Parshat Chayei Sarah, just to hark back, when Eliezer gets to the well, he can't get over his good miracle. I was going to say good fortune, but it's not fortune. That's the point. The miracle is that he has a relationship with a Kadosh Baruch Hu, that he davens to Hashem, please send me the right woman. And exactly when he does, what happens? Exactly what happens? It's someone from the family. That wasn't what they bargained for. That's not what Avram Avinu told Eliezer to look for. But it's even from the family, from all these people here? Oh, Mina Shamayim. And it was Mina Shamayim. Yitzchak is telling Yaakov, do what I did. Go back there. Go find someone who is of the family. And should realize that it's much more directed. All right. 2 more psukim, and then we'll open up for questions and comments. Ve'el Shaddai yivarech otcha v'yafrecha v'yarbecha v'ayita li kehal amim. Here, this is a bracha with the name Kel Shakai, one of the names of God. and then this name of God, this aspect of a Kadosh Baruch Hu should bless you, right? Kel Shakai, according to Chizkuni, he points out the God who has it can be for all creatures, right? Meaning there's a lot of God is not limited. Kel Shakai, there's enough for every creature. So God will be with you, should bless you, should make you fruitful, to multiply. You'll have many nations that will come from the Kahal Amim. The last pasuk, the key linchpin pasuk, in fact, V'itein lecha et birkat Avraham. God should give you the blessing of Avram, lecha ulezaracha itach, to you and your progeny with you, l'rishtecha et eretz megurecha shenatan Elokim Avraham, to give you possession of the land, to inherit the land, which is the place of your dwelling, which God has given to Avraham. And this key pasuk tells us that on a certain level, the whole thing until now was one big misunderstanding. In other words, what they thought was so crucial as a blessing that Yaakov got, that Esav thought he was supposed to get, that Yaakov thought he was supposed to get, that Rivka thought Yaakov was supposed to get, it wasn't actually the covenantal blessing. The covenantal blessing, Birkat Avraham, is the one that God gave Avraham and permitted Avraham to bestow on Yitzchak, Kibi Yitzchak Chazar. And now Yitzchak says, it was here all, he takes it out of his jacket. It was here all along. And now he bestows it on Yaakov. And this bracha, which I think there's more to say on it, but let me take some questions, comments, is the covenantal moment. And it's actually here, what's amazing is also the commentators had said that Esav sought to emulate his father. Since his father was 40 when he got married, Esav says, well, I'm 40, I'm going to get married right now. But what could have very well been is he could have therefore taken a page from his father also to not marry the daughters of Canaan. He didn't do that. And so Yaakov now is being told by his father, by the by, I'll tell you the obvious, don't marry the Benot Chet. Go up to where I went up to, etc. And he doesn't use the language, what I did. And what's interesting is also he puts it on, it's very much about his mother. If we thought there was a fraying of the relationship between Yitzchak and Rivka, it's certainly not or maybe a distant relationship. Yitzchak still feels that Rivka Imenu's family is worthy of being the shidduch to be married into the family of Avram Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, etc. Yeah? Okay. So this is just some introductory thoughts and remarks. Shelley, been waiting patiently, and then I saw someone else put in. Shelley, go ahead.
This is another example of Rivka tricking Yitzchak. She's not telling him the real reason. This is a reason, but it's not the real reason. The real reason is I don't want Esav to kill Yaakov. She's not telling him that. Just like she deceived him with the dressing up Yaakov, she's deceiving him again. And I find that very, very, very troubling. And the idea of not take a wife, why didn't Yitzchak and Rivka take wives for both their children like they thought they were going to do? Avraham finally, although it's pretty late too, sends somebody to take a wife for his son. Why didn't they do the same thing? There very well may have been some kind of, we know midrashically, there is the idea that there was supposed to be shidduchim between Leah and Rachel and Esav and Yaakov. Right. So if they have this idea, then they could have done this a long time ago. The idea that...
Good, 2 points then you're making, yeah?
Yeah, and then Esav takes a wife. Well, they didn't take a wife for him. Maybe he thinks he's supposed to do it. Maybe he thinks that did they really say don't take a wife from the Hittite people? And as far as Yaakov goes, and why does Yitzchak have to say that to him? He would know that. I mean, you'd think that he would know that. And so I don't understand a lot of this. There's a lot of miscommunication going on around here to the very, very end, and I blame a lot of it on Rivka. Sorry.
Okay, I know you had a very harsh feeling about Rivka Imenu. So let me say a few things. First of all, I'm not going to answer you in order, but hopefully I'll get to your various important points. So I think I don't know if you were on that class, but we did talk extensively when we talked about Esav marrying these women from the Hittite women, the Chittim, that some of the commentators did, in fact, level a criticism against Yitzchak and against Rivka for not taking care of finding Shidduchim. I think the point is well taken. I think also you're mentioning the Midrashim about how Leah was always crying because, according to one Midrash, she was always told, there's a boy that we have for you, a Shidduch, and he lives in Canaan. He's lovely. What line of work is he in? He's and there's sort of the stammering. Well, what does he do? Well, I want to know. Well, what noble work does he do? He's a killer. Aha, a criminal. What? Come on, So is he a tzaddik? His parents are very righteous. Well, what about him? He has a ruddy complexion. So like she's crying all the time. How come I'm getting paired with that? All right, that's Leah, and then Rachel's waiting for Yaakov. That's sort of, But why is the Medrash telling us that? It's to remind us about that. The tragedy is, what's the line? I think it was they say in the name of Toynbee, the historian Toynbee. The definition of tragedy is the difference between what is and what could have been. And what could have been is it could have been that if Esav would have married the right girl, if his parents would have taken care of it, maybe he wouldn't have gone on the path that he was. Maybe he could have corrected the path he was on. I mean, it's kind of counterfactual to play the what if game, but that's what I understand that Medrash to be telling us. Like, that could have happened. It didn't, but it could have happened. Right. And then we have the other idea that maybe Dina's supposed to marry Esav.
Yeah.
That's the other one. So that's the point, is the next generation, there's like another opportunity. Missed that one too, and the idea, so that's just on that point about like how come they didn't do Shidduchim earlier, etc. We did discuss it, and we saw that some of the Farshim do censor Yitzchak and Rivka, and others kind of said they got to figure it out on their own. And everybody knew this was the unspoken word in the family, which begs the question: so why is Yitzchak telling Yaakov, go to this place? But on your first point, I still want to take a much softer view of Rivka Imenu because it's easy to judge her in a certain way, in a harsh light, without appreciating that actually there are a lot of layers of complexity in her family, as there are in many of our families. There are silences. There are words that cannot be spoken or communicated. They're words that could be spoken verbally, but are not going to be received. The way they're in this predicament in the first place is related, as the Netziv wrote. We learned about this previously, the communication issues between Yitzchak and Rivka. I read this, by the way, as on one level, a cautionary tale. Right? Don't lack communication, because look at the problems it can create. Number one. Number two is the reality that Yitzchak has, we've talked about this many times, a certain otherworldly dimension to him. He doesn't seem to be generally associated with practicality in the same way that others are. He's a deeply spiritual personality. Rivka Imenu, grounded, tactical, practical. Here's what's going to be. Here's what's going to happen. Here's the plan. And you're quite right. But instead of talking about it, for me, I mean, you could say it in your language if that makes, that works for you. But the idea that Rivka Imenu is tricking Yitzchak, deviously, or is it he's just not going to hear it? Sometimes you have a loved one that's just not hearing what you're saying. You said it a few times in 8 different ways. They're just not getting it. He just hasn't heard, even now, that Esav is who he is. And Rivka says, I cut through all that. I know exactly who he is. And we have to take that in hand and be realistic about it. A clear-eyed realism. And Yitzchak, no, there's potential and there's love and there's goodness, and right. But here, this is the covenantal moment where Yitzchak says to Yaakov, here's what I want to do. Now, I don't think that anyone in that family could have known, or could have thought rather, it's okay to just marry the local girls. Given the family story, and we don't have that many family stories in their household. The family story is we don't marry Benot Canaan, which is why your mother came from She's the mail order bride extraordinaire. She came from Padan Aram. She's so kind and so loving and lovey and right, lovely. She her midot and her and every kid had to know that in the family. There were only 2 kids. It's not like they're getting lost in a dozen children. There's 2 kids there. Why? What's the difference here for me? Why is Yitzchak now spelling it out for Yaakov? Vayitzavehu. He gave him a commandment. And Gadol hametzuva ve'osim min she'ena metzuva osa. Greater is one who's commanded rather than one who is not commanded. What's interesting is Yitzchak would not have taken the initiative had Rivka not told him, you need to take this initiative. Katzti b'chayai mipnot b'nei chet, right? And lama li chayim, how could it be alive? Very existential, dramatic language from Rivka Imenu. What's Yitzchak saying to Yaakov? I bless you and I command you. What is it? Go there. And may God give you, don't think you're being written off. Rather, I'm giving you the Birkat Avraham for when you go. So take that with you. Yeah. Now, Deanne had written in, and welcome, Deanne. Good to see you with us this morning, that both Yaakov and Esau married into difficult families, which is definitely true. One took Hittite women. The other one worked for many for love and treated them badly. We're coming to that story. That was got its own parsha, right? Its own parsha.
Neither lives were ideal.
Right. What life is ideal? Everyone has challenges in their life and struggles and things that are messy.
For 2 wives, he worked for like 14 years, and then he chased after him anyway. He went to go chase after him. So what was so ideal about neither of them had wonderful lives.
Yeah. They had wonderful lives with many challenges. Or miserable lives with a few good things. That just depends on the attitude.
Yes, I guess so.
Yeah. So when we're looking at these psukim here, the idea that the Birkat Avraham was being conveyed, Rashi points us to this is when Hashem told Avram Veschalegorgel, "I'll make you a great nation," and then it's further along at the Aked of Barchu v'Zaracha. You'll be blessed through your progeny, right? You otan brachot amurot b'shvilcha mimcha yetzei oto hagoy v'oto hazera mevorach. And what's fascinating is, just think about this. At the end of Parshat Lech Lecha, Avram Avinu was told by Hashem that you will have a child. His name will be Yitzchak, and ki bi Yitzchak yikar lechazara. And Avram himself is saying, but what about Ishmael? Lu Yishmael yichal lefanecha. And Hashem says back to Avram, yes, he will be great. There'll be many children from him. Yes, okay. But the Jewish nation is flowing through Yitzchak. Ki bi Yitzchak yikar lechazara. That will be your progeny, your seed in the sense of the Jewish nation. Yitzchak never has that revelation from Hashem. And on a certain level, why should he? They're both his child from the same righteous matriarch. So there's an ambiguity there. And to Yitzchak, why should there be a choice? There doesn't have to be a choice. The problem is that, again, in Rivka Imenu's mind, Esav is wicked. That's the psak, if you will, of Chazal. That's sort of the given from a midrashic perspective, a traditional perspective is not everything you read on the level of pshat is the whole story. That's true in none of our stories. On the level of Chazal is an understanding that he is unworthy, not as worthy, unworthy, whatever it is. On the level of pshat, though, he does certain things that signal that he's gone against the family. The main one is the intermarriage piece, for sure. Another one is, I think, the blood-curdling scream that he issues, that Rivka understands, whether prophetically, from his friends who are talking, from his own soliloquies, if you will, that he has a murderous intent toward his brother. Did he have murder behind him? On a level of pshat, that's not clear. The Midrashim say absolutely he was hunting women and he was killing people and a bounty hunter, all sorts of things, in addition to hunting animals. Here, Rivka, Yitzchak, there's still a lack of communication, absolutely, but at least she told him, look, we can all point on the level of pshat, my dear husband, on the level of pshat, do you not see that our son Esav did something that brought us great embitterment? Let's prevent that from happening to the other son. For this, you don't need midrashim, right? Forget that Esav did anything wrong before. One thing that on a level of pshat, the family is very concerned about, he married the wrong women. Let's not let that happen with our other son. Now, on the what's the word? the Torah's narration gives us also the psychological, mental aspect of this. Esav is actually thinking in his heart, my father will eventually die, and then I will kill my brother. Rivka is thinking, I know what Esav is thinking. I know how he thinks, whether it's because of prophetic reasons, whether it's because, again, she heard it. All different commentators said different ideas. We saw that previously. But I can't say that to my husband because my husband doesn't hear. He can't hear, do you know your son Esav is going to kill Yaakov? No. Let me say it in different parlance. A Jew would never kill another Jew. A brother would never kill a brother. No. It can't be. Rivka, you come from a world where everyone's scheming and dealing. Stop thinking ill of your son Esav. I'm sure it's none of that. Rivka can't take that chance. Rivka cannot say those words to a Yitzchak because he's not going to hear it. He was willing to give Esav the bracha. Doesn't hear it. He's not going to hear this either. So what does she do? What's on the level of pshat? Something that will reach him. Remember when he got married? Remember when he brought in these women with the idolatry, with the right? It's a source of embitterment. Can't stay. That has to switch. That has to change. Yeah. Shelley, something else to start.
Yes, okay, I'm looking at the Hebrew for where you said that Yitzchak commands Yaakov not to take a wife from the Canaanites. And it doesn't really say that. I mean, there's not the word for command. And in fact, it's even in my art school, it's translated as instructed, and it's Vayomer. Isn't Vayomer not supposed to be a command? So where do you get from the Peshat? Where do you get
word
the idea?
Before Vayitzavehu, Vayivarech oto Vayitzavehu.
Okay, let me see.
Chapter 28, verse 1. He blessed him and he commanded him. And here's what he said. Here was what the commandment was. Vayitzavehu, Vayomer lo. Here's the commandment, colon. He said to him, don't take a woman. Get up and go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And he said, on your way, here's what you're going to get. God should bless you. He should make you fruitful and multiply. He should give you the Brachot of Abraham for you and your children. You should inherit this land. That's all what's happened. That's all happening here, right? Now, Vayar Esav, verse 6. Vayar Esav ki ve'rach Yitzchak et Yaakov. Esav sees that Yitzchak gave a bracha to Yaakov. Now everyone can see. Everyone's in the room when the brachas are happening. V'shilach oto padena Aram. He knew exactly where he was being sent. Lakachat lo misham isha b'varcho oto vayitzav alav limor lo tikach isha mibnot Kenan. So Esav saw, which implies that he's actually in the room, because he knows the content of the bracha. He knows that Yitzchak blessed Yaakov, sent it to padena Aram, which is amazing. If Esav is really keen on killing his brother, why don't he just come find him? The answer is because Yitzchak's still alive. The answer is because out of sight, out of mind. There could be different reasons, but it's interesting. It's not that Esav had no idea where, he didn't put Yaakov in a witness protection program. He saw the bracha and he saw where he was sent. And why was he sent there? What was Esav hearing Yitzchak saying to Yaakov? They live in close quarters. Imagine Yitzchak said to Yaakov, I think your brother wants to kill you. So since I'm walking on eggshells with your brother Esav, bit of a temper, you'll just have to leave till he calms down. No. Instead, very overtly, with the other brother listening, the brother was told, my dear son, you'll have to go to Padan Aram. You know why? I need you to find a wife, and I've commanded you, don't marry a woman from the Benot Canaan. Esav hears that bracha, and especially if Yitzchak is, he's very otherworldly. Again, he's going to say out loud, we don't want you to be killed by your brother, therefore go there. So now what does Esav think about what Yitzchak thinks of him, etc., right? Part of I always feel is part of the, either Yitzchak doesn't know or Yitzchak doesn't want to make it known that he knows more. He doesn't let on that he's aware, to keep up the, I would call it, as someone once said it in a speech like 25 years ago, a sacred fiction. Someone said in a speech about something else, not related to Esav, Yitzchak, etc. The sacred fiction that in my father's mind, I'm a great guy. I have potential to be a tzaddik. And my father doesn't confront me about these issues because he holds me to a higher standard, because he has expectations for me that I know I can make. As Karen just wrote in, an intentional blindness. Exactly. An intentional blindness, a willful blindness. But it's not a willful blindness for protection of Yitzchak himself, for himself, but for protection of the relationship between him and Esav, to maybe have Esav feel he could reach up to match his father's high opinion of him, not to disappoint. Now, they never criticized Esav directly, as far as we know. It was a Morat Ruach, end of chapter 26, when he married the daughters of Chet. So Morat Ruach and bitterness of spirit, they never confronted him. But he overhears that now, don't marry a woman from Canaan, which is why we understand verse 7, Vayishma Yaakov el aviv el imo vayelach padena Aram. He listened to his father and to his mother, because he understood that whatever his father said, his mother had told him to say. The mother had said he should go right to Padan Aram. Didn't she say that? He can't. Oh, sorry. He can't marry the women from here, right? But Yitzchak figured it out. But it was Rivka arranging things. Again, he listens to his father. He listens to his mother, right? Both. And at this moment, when he goes, what happens? What does Esav see? Vayar Esav kiraot benot Canaan be'ene Yitzchak aviv. In the eyes of his father. Don't you think it's telling? Back to Karen's point, my father who can't see with his eyes, in my father's eyes, it's not good. Now you could say, well, it's a figure of speech, but there's a double entendre. It's not just the figure of speech in the eyes of, but actually in the sight of, right? And I see that that's not what my father wants. And therefore,
not his mother. Not his mother. That's what's so striking between the two verses, is that
I agree. Yet Yaakov has an integrated view of dealing with his father and his mother, and is another indication that Esav does not have a good relationship with his mother, and that is only very partly on Rivka. It's very much on Esav. He doesn't think his parents are disappointed. He thinks his father's disappointed.
We have no, except for the fact that she says that she doesn't want both sons killed on the same day. We have nothing that shows any kind of affection or anything for Esav. And a kid can see that.
We have that. Just saying, he ignores his mother. Right, in the eyes of his father. What about his mother? There is a contrast there, exactly. Yaakov listens to what his parents say, both parents. Esav, he's his dad's son, not related to his mother. So what does he do? He has to impress his father. His mother is getting ignored. Did it start now, or did it start much earlier? Are you going to say it's her fault? She didn't do it. She wasn't nice to him? Yecholiot.
She had bad expectations from him from when she was pregnant, and it's hard to believe that didn't
color her view.
The color her view when they were very, very small.
It could be. It could be. It could be. It could also be that if you look carefully at the psukim, when she gets the word from Hashem, we saw already, it's not entirely clear that they were told one is going to be good and one is going to be bad. One's going to be a tzaddik, one's going to be a rasha. It just said there are two nations in your womb, and there'll be two peoples that will emanate from within you, and there'll be some kind of one will be stronger than the other. It doesn't say that it has to be fighting or killing. And Rav Yavod Sa'ir, we saw, could be read in two different ways. Right? Either the Rav, the older will serve the younger, or Rav Ya'avod Sa'ir means the younger will work for the older. It wasn't clear. It was ambiguous. The different Mefarshei Mikra understood it in different ways. We see it in retrospect as well. He's a Rasha. She doesn't like him. It's true. It says that Rivka loved Yaakov unconditionally, and Yitzchak loved Esav. But it doesn't say they didn't love the other child also. Doesn't mean Yitzchak didn't love Yaakov. It just means that there was something about the way in which Esav interacted with his father, bringing the tzayid. We talked about that. Is he hunting his father with subterfuge because he's lying to him? Is he literally just bringing him food and his father appreciates that? He sees in his son something that he does not possess, a pragmatism about taking care of the foodstuffs for the house. They're all different possibilities. But the coup de grace of the whole parsha, the last line, which we're concluding with now, take some more questions, comments to the end here, is Vayelech Esav el Yishmael, Vayikach et Machalat bat Yishmael ben Avraham, Achot Nevayot, al Nashav lo Isha. I mean, the idea that the only other thing that Esav could think to do is to go find Uncle Yishmael's daughter. Yeah. Is quite something. Because on one level, well, yeah, he's trying to make right. So who else does he know? Well, where else could, may I ask you, where else could Esav have gone to find a shidduch moments after his father said to his brother, you should really go get married in Padan Aram? And remember Shelley mentioning the medrash, that there's a medrash that this one's supposed to marry this one and that one's supposed to marry that one. So part of it is on Yitzchak and Rivka. How come they didn't arrange the shidduch better for Esav? But isn't part of it now on Esav? Why didn't he didn't take a note? I'll also go to Padan Aram and I'll marry one of the girls there from the family. Oh, they have twins. We're also twins. This would be great. But that's not what happened.
Rabbi,
He had to do it on his own and go some other direction and go find the other also ran, who was also cast out. He was cast out, Yishmael, and to marry her, to bring her into the family as fixing, having wed himself to the chitim.
Rabbi, I'm having a methodological problem with all of this.
Okay.
Okay, there are always midrashim, and I understand why there are the midrashim, because they're answering questions, but they do contradict themselves sometimes. So we've got the midrashim that as Eliezer is coming back with Rivka to marry not to marry Yitzchak. Yitzchak is coming back from taking Hagar and Ishmael back to his father so that they shouldn't be alone. Okay, so in that case, if he's trying to reconcile with his half-brother, it shows that he finds his half-brother somewhat worthy. So my problem methodologically is, if we're taking some of these midrashim, how do we reconcile that with some of the other things? They don't necessarily work. If right. Ishmael is okay because there's a midrash that Yitzchak, this great tzaddik, goes back to get him, and maybe that's why he doesn't want to cast his son, who's maybe asking the right way, out of the family. Okay, right. How do we take it with then it's really bad for Esav to go and get a daughter from Ishmael if Ishmael's part of the family? Right.
So let me Rishon. The midrashim don't always have to reconcile. This is one of the points that the Rambam makes in his commentary to the Mishnah, where he says that the midrashim, there are people who try to reconcile all the midrashim, but the Rambam says that's not something you need to be engaged in. The two midrashim, see, pick up this midrash or you pick up that one. You can pick them up both up, but they don't have to reconcile with each other. In this case, by the way, I think you really can reconcile them. The point was that when Yitzchak went to go get Hagar, Hagar herself was not actually personally the problem. Yishmael was acting in a mocking way. The Torah says so in Parshat Vayera. When he speaks derisively, he's mitzachek. He's speaking derisively about Yitzchak, about Sarah, etc. So that was what was worthy of censure, and in fact, in his case, of being sent packing. In the case of Esav, so the point here is that he also thinks maybe there is something redemptive to be found in Yishmael. But as the Seforno and others point out, like if he just heard that it's not good to marry the Bnot Chet, but he also heard his father say, and it's good to marry the daughters of Lavan, essentially, why didn't he do that? But no, he has to do his own thing. So he's going to find the daughters of Yishmael, right? He doesn't take that other second side of it. Sforno writes, "Shechashav shezayah mipnei she'en menagdot liritzono," and halach al Yishmael b'zehodia. He showed she'Yitzchak yechol limchot be'esav k'shanas haknaniot im haya noten lev Kamo she'iratu ata Rivka al Yaakov. Okay, so there's a little more there that he went there and he wanted to show that Yitzchak he could have criticized him when he got married to the Bnot Knan. He didn't say anything, but now he realized, I shouldn't have done that. He still didn't get the memo. Maybe he should stick within the family in Padan Aram. Notice that Yitzchak and Rivka did not send Yaakov to go get married to Yishmael's family. And Yishmael and Hagar are not the same thing, not the same person. Remember, if Keturah is Hagar, which is self-midrashic, if Keturah is Hagar, and if Keturah is Hagar, and there are more children that are born, which the Torah does testify to at the end of Avram Avinu's life, those children are still not part of the covenant of Avraham. And if Esav had any hope of being part of the Abrahamic covenant, which it seems like those hopes are dwindling, maybe he could have recaptured it by going to Padan Aram. And while his father's still alive, he wouldn't kill Yaakov anyway. Of course, that would have been problematic for other reasons, because Rivka did want to separate the two of them so that Esav wouldn't kill Yaakov. And that did end up being what happened. There is a move here of Esav to try to keep it somewhat within the family, I guess. And therefore he went to Machalat Bat Yishmael, right? The Chizkuni has a line where he says, Amar Esav, Brachot achronot halalu natan Yitzchak liYaakov at Eretz Canaan, shenitna la'Avram. I see that Yitzchak gave Yaakov the land of Canaan. He just gave it to him, the bracha, as was given to Avram, my grandfather, basically. V'tzivalo kacha isham mishpachto, shelo kachim dot Canaan. Mashanasadim not Canaan. The fact that I got intermarried, that's why I lost the land. Seek me many, Eretz Canaan. So halachah lekachlet bat Yishmael amar shomeata ezkel nachlat Avram. Maybe if I marry into the daughters of Yishmael, I'll have some of the heritage of Avram Avinu, because I messed it up in my direct line. Maybe I could get it through another line. And what's amazing is, according to Chizkuni, it's again about his connection to his grandfather, even more so than to his own parents. Which is more to say about it. Anyway, I must run along. So I have a 10 o'clock meeting that I'm going into, but I wish everyone all the best. We are not learning next week. When we gather in 2 weeks, we'll be starting a new Parsha. A lot to say on it. Please join me, Parshat Vayetze, beginning in 2 weeks on Monday morning. Sei gesund. No class this